go.
Welcome to Doctor on Call with your host, Doc Griffin. The doctor will be with you momentarily. Our guest this evening is legendary filmmaker Sean S. Cunningham. Caution! Doctor on Call rests on 13 acres of earth over the very center of hell. To avoid fainting, keep repeating. It's only a talk show. Only a talk show. Only a talk show. Doc Griffin, paging Doc Griffin, you're needed in the OR stat.
And thank you very much, Nurse Bridge. And thanks for everybody for being a little patient with us. We had some technical issues, and we're hoping that what you're seeing right now is the beautiful nature of the new look for Doctor on Call. This is a special reason to go ahead and roll out the new look because this is someone that I've personally wanted to have a conversation with as well. He's not only a director, not only a producer, not only a writer. He has a legit 50 years in the business, and not just slogging by too. There are several movies and projects connected with his name that you certainly would recognize, and I'm sure you've already read the descriptor down the bottom. So, without any further ado, without any diagnosis, uh, let's go ahead, jump right in, and speak with Mr. Sean S. Cunningham. And
Well,
how
hello.
and how are you this evening?
I'm fine. How are you?
I have no complaints. This is I will say that as far as anticipation goes, um, the audience, because I never call them fans because they're never fanatical, uh, but the audience, our crowd, has been looking forward to this interview more than anybody else that I've ever listed. And,
Well,
and
I don't know if that says something about me or something about your audience.
I
But
think I think we're going to go with some of column A, some of column B.
okay.
But of course, one of the things that we were working on was to try and update a picture, but we didn't get a picture. So here is what you can look at while you see the pretty screen scroll around. And uh, I just want to get right into it. Now, of course, usually the formation of your life starts with family. From what I've read, you were born and raised in New York, correct?
Yeah, I was born and raised in New York. I moved to Connecticut in third grade, and I stayed there through well for a long time till I moved to California in 1985.
And during those times, those growing years, uh, was there any hint? I mean, because most kids that age, before third grade, you ask them what they want to be, and it's usually a policeman or a fireman. Um, did you have any idea what path that you would go on? Was there any type of indicator for you?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to be a cowboy.
Oh yeah. Well, that's definitely not a bad thing.
No, I had I really didn't have anything like a childhood ambition to be a a um, a Marvel icon. Not none whatsoever.
Well, no, we would call it's what we would call a slash,
Okay.
because writer slash producer slash
Oh,
director,
slash cowboy.
yeah, slash cowboy.
Right, right.
You got to get them spurs on. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so now, did you uh, did you have any regret going from New York to Connecticut?
Oh
Was
no.
it a radical life change?
Yeah, it was, but no, we didn't have any regrets. That was in the, I guess, in the early 50s, someplace, early 50s, and yeah, like I said, I had just, I think I had actually, I started school in Connecticut in fifth grade, so that was, it was a new school, new place, new friends. It was fine. I liked the country, and we had we had chickens and one great big fat pig, and I don't know what else. But it was a make believe farm.
Well, so which of your talents started manifesting first? I would personally guess it would be writing.
No, I I doubt it. I try to use English whenever I can, but outside of that, I'm rarely accused of being a writer.
Um, well, you definitely have writing credits. So, um,
Uh,
IMDb maybe has problems with giving credit, but at least they try to list them all.
well, I I have had an abiding passion for trying to understand how stories work, and it dates back to when I first, started to started to make movies. I had to figure out how to make, you know, what is a movie story and what's a story in the first place. And so I, over the years, I have done a great deal of editing, and I've worked with an awful lot of writers, and and that's where I come out. I think I'm much more an aggressive fan of writers than a writer myself.
So, what would you say that your first inspiration was? Was it books? Was it movies?
Inspiration. Oh, I don't know if I ever. No, I mean, no. I think I was probably a little bit more serious. I think as a young kid, I read comic books under the covers with a flashlight. But um, no,
Who?
I didn't have that sort of fantasy inspiration. I was just, I was a kid trying to be a teenager, learn how to smoke, and do all the important things.
Yeah, well, smoking was definitely important for me as a teen. It made me popular and cool.
Well, yeah, yeah, but that's I think I led a fairly unremarkable childhood, and you get through it.
Well, so you're essentially moving through school. When you get to that point, and I know it's not true today, but when you got to the point of your senior year, I know friends, family, counselors will always try to say, "Okay, your adulthood's coming up now, so you've got to pick a path. You have to choose a career." Did you have any idea what you wanted to do coming out of the gates once you got the diploma in your hand?
A high school diploma?
Yeah.
No, I had decided that uh, I I figured, well, okay, I'll be a doctor. How do you get to be a doctor? Well, you go to a school that specializes in pre med, and so I went to this little college in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, called Franklin and Marshall, and I was going to be a doctor. I took all of the appropriate courses, and I simultaneously I had like a double major, and I majored in English, and I had fallen in love with the theater at the school called the Green Room, and
Okay.
I was in all of those different productions. But I was still planning to be a doctor, and it wasn't until uh, I guess my junior year, I realized that summer, I realized that I really didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to, I liked all the things that went with being a doctor, but I didn't have any desire to study organic chemistry or microbiology or all those other things. I just thought it'd be a great position to hold.
Well,
And
and
so
when you
I said, all right, then you don't have to be a doctor. You're going to be something else. I said, all right.
so um, what was your role? What position did you fill with your theater company?
Oh, well, I appeared in most in most of the productions, and um, and if I didn't, there's it was a whole little mini community. We built sets and did all kinds of other things, and I think we put on about 4 or 5, maybe about 4 or 5 productions a year, and I just it was a great place for me to hang out. I liked it a lot.
Was it more like a Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland atmosphere?
Yeah, yeah, probably. I think that I think a big transition happened for me. Actually, it was in my freshman year. Uh, they hired an artist in residence because the second play of the year was going to be Richard III,
Oh,
and so there was a Franklin Marshall graduate from a few years earlier was trying to make his start on Broadway, and he came down to play Richard III, and his name is Roy Scheider, who some people
oh,
remember from some of his movies in the past, like French Connection, Seven Ups, and so on. But he came down to play Richard, and there was Roy Scheider, and then there was everybody else. And he was able to take this sort of stilted, strange sounding dialogue and turned it into magical, wonderful theater. And I was one of those aha moments that happen, and you realize that this could be really special. But you have to know a lot, and you have to have a lot of craft and a lot of talent to do it. But I was always grateful to Roy Scheider after that uh, for kind of turning on the lights.
and you have acted in films a little farther down on your career.
Yeah, but I God help me, I would never try to make a living doing that.
So, uh, that's honestly a very noble thing because you realize you want to be a part of this community, but you realize that there's certain roles or jobs that you can't or don't want to fulfill. Now, according to the research that I've done, this kind of leads you into the commercial world.
Yeah, I think that the things that I did. Initially, I went to Stanford and studied in a master's program there, and I did Shakespeare up in Oregon, in Ashland, Oregon. Came back to Manhattan and was able to get a job on a road company from out of Lincoln Center, and that's when I basically started. I left drama and started in show business. And you recognize that it's a business dedicated to making money, and what's more, you realize it's a very, very difficult, highly competitive business. And that's where I started out as a young college graduate, and I was fortunate enough to be successful at stage management. And I decided one day, that having gotten married along the way, that wanted to maybe try something else. And so, well, let's try making a movie, and that's kind of how it started. But I wanted to figure out how do you make something and then sell it for more than you paid for it. And I think that was my starting point.
Well, and I think it is kind of an important thing to make the distinction because they don't call it show business. Um, uh, um, what's the old phrase? They don't call it show fun; they call it show business.
I never heard that, but yeah.
Um, but you kind of started finding your niche. But I'm definitely interested in the fact of uh, what does it take day to day to run and manage a theater company? Because I
Well,
would think that you're spinning a lot of plates.
um, yeah, yeah. Trying to either run a theater or to be a production stage manager, which is it's a convenient division between the front of the house and the back of the house. But especially as a stage manager, um, you wind up having responsibility for anything that goes wrong. If stuff goes right, you're invisible. But as soon as something goes wrong, why didn't you do that, or why didn't I do that? So your mindset starts to become anticipating things that might go wrong, and you try to take as many precautions as you can to keep them from happening. It's yeah, I think it's a certain kind of mindset. But I was fortunate enough that I gravitated towards it.
And this whole thing, as you're looking at it, um, was that a good foundation to build to go into movies?
Uh, no, I don't know. I think that it's good. I think it's good generically. It's good in terms of problem solving and that kind of thing. But there's very very small connection between theatrical presentations and movies. They're very very different animals. I didn't know that at the time. When I first started out, I just said, well, look, if we're going to just do an off Broadway show, we're going to have to hire actors, get a script, rent a theater, get some costumes, have rehearsals, and put on this show and see if anybody comes. And then if you're lucky, in a 99 seat house, you have 8 shows a week. You'll sell 800 tickets a week, and then you start doing the math and say, "Oh, geez, that seems like a really difficult way to make a living." I said to myself, "Well, wait a second. What if we just were to make a movie? You still have to do the same thing. You get some actors, you get a script, you get some costumes, and you rehearse it, and then you shoot it, and then it's done, and then you don't have to pay anybody anymore. You just go to a movie theater and project it, and you get the money there. How hard could that be?"
But
and
I would
and
still think,
that's really yeah, that was really my mindset, however oversimplified that might be, when I started. And
well,
uh, everything I learned was from that ground zero. I think the big thing I learned in the first couple of years was that theater um, is much more intellectual and visceral, and most information comes in through the ears and through the brain, through the head. And movies are visceral, and they come in through the heart, through the gut, and it's really, really a different process. And it took a long time to really, get both hands around that difference. But that's I think one of the key differences at the get go.
did your theater experience at least lessen the steepness of the learning curve?
Well, yeah, my it surely did. I mean, my experience, I had worked with actors, and I had been around all those other processes before. So if I hadn't, I would have been really completely out of luck. But it's like taking what I had learned and then finding a um, different way in to use all of that stuff.
And so this takes us right up to the 70s. As a matter of fact, 1970. This is when you had your directorial debut
No.
with would you call it more of an art house movie, or would you say it was an exploitation movie?
Are you talking about together?
Um, actually, bear with me here for just a second. I was actually talking about Art of Marriage.
Oh no, Art of Marriage was Art of Marriage is a very sort of lame pseudo documentary that purported to be about ways to have better marriage, which is to say, follow these directions and you'll have much better sex, and then you'll have a much better marriage. But it was it was very silly, very uh, poorly made movie. But it was the first thing that I ever did, and it really helped because then I had now made a movie.
And how long did it take, and what kind of budget were you working on?
Oh, it took weeks. It- this was so much a case of just not knowing what I didn't know. But no, we wound up. It was me and a couple of friends of mine from the theater who both of them had gone to film school, and so it was a question of rounding up some actors, and we shot it over a weekend and spent maybe 2 weeks gluing it together. And then you said, "Well, what are we going to do with this?" And well, let's find a movie theater. And so I took out the yellow pages and started calling movie theaters and said, "I got this movie. You want to take a look at it?" And as it turns out, I was very fortunate, and I ran into a theater owner named Bingo Brandt, who had a bunch of theaters on 42nd Street, and and he booked the movie into one of his theaters on 42nd Street, and I don't know, it ran for 26, 27 weeks. I mean, it was a long, long time, and suddenly I had what most other movie producers didn't have is I had a hit. I had a movie that cost $3,000, and oh my goodness, we probably made 40 or 50,000 out of that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I find interesting about it because um, from all the interviews that I've read, you didn't go hog wild with it. You said, "Hey, now that we have this amount of money, let's go make a better film."
Well, yeah, or make another film, and essentially we made a slightly more colorful, serious-minded film called Together, which is it was similar to the first. It was better and prettier, and it was largely largely people I knew and family, and beautiful people running around the backyard in bathing suits with nice suntans, and like that.
And
But
now also, were you not editor on both of the films?
well, no, I was in the cutting room, 70 hours a week, but I certainly didn't have the skills to edit. That's a very difficult and very much an acquired skill.
And this kind of starts your relationship with a name that people will know in the audience, Wes Craven.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. We cut this movie in at 56 West 45th Street, which was it was a building that had a lot of filmmakers in it. And Wes was driving a cab and was down the hall, and he was syncing up dailies for a documentary filmmaker. And I ran into him, and I needed help in the cutting room with Roger Murphy, who was the editor. And Wes came on, and uh, he was a funny guy, and we had a lot in common. The three of us got along great, and he stayed in the trenches cutting together with Roger and I, and finishing it after Roger went on to another movie, and we didn't separate for years. It was that's we were both learning about all of this stuff together. Wes had taught in college, and was a novelist and a poet, but he kind of liked movies, so he's looking into it, trying to figure it out, same way I was.
well, and I had the pleasure of having an interview with him about 15 years ago, and one of the things that he kind of briefly talked about was the fact that when he was in this, um, uh, he said the whole building was production. You never knew what was coming through, and he did admit to the fact that he was the editor and even directed a couple stag reels.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Where and I mean his thing was wherever the money came in to pay me to learn.
Right. Um, And that's he had a family. It's and same as I did, and you have to support the people that you love.
Oh, sure. And the taking that just a step further, um, what kind of projects did you find yourself working on? I mean, not
Well,
just we're not going to get to the salacious part of it, but uh, I would think that uh, building a documentary as opposed to building an action film or building a drama or building a romance, that those would all they'd have the same configuration as a puzzle, but the pieces would definitely be different.
hmm well, um, yeah, they're very different. I well, in our case, together took I don't know, it took a long time to not just to finish it, but to find a way to sell it. As it turned out, it became sort of a fluke hit. I found some theater owners in Massachusetts who liked it. They ran it in their theaters, and it was a very big hit for them. And then it went national from there. And they turned to me and said, "Well, let's do another picture. And what do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know." And I talked to Wes, and we uh, we said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And then Wes had this idea of doing a movie which became Last House on the Left, which was kind of a modern adaptation of
Whoops.
uh, that was how we started making dramatic. That's when we started shooting dramatic movies. However rough it was, that's where we started. And and that was, at the time, that was, God, we were just like kids running around at night painting painting mustaches on billboards, that kind of thing. But we had a great time, and it was a terrific education.
Well, and for the early 70s, I don't know, a lot of moviegoers, a lot of fans have been desensitized by incredible amounts of gore, blood for the sake of blood. But when Last House on the Left came out in 72, it just wasn't about the blood. It was exploitative, but there was a whole lot of psychology that went into it as well. As far as um, setting it up with the researching, you have your producer credit on that as well, but I believe you also had a co-writer credit on it.
No, if I did, no, I didn't have, I never took a, I've taken very few writing credits in my life, and I certainly didn't have a writing credit on Last House. Last House was very much Wes's creation, and I, uh,
How
I produced. I mean, we didn't. There were. I mean, my goodness. Um, on any particular day, you call yourself a producer, but you might also have to get lunch, take sound, go down to the store and buy some more quarter-inch tape. And oh, do you have any film? It was like it was really the blind leading the blind.
Well, I was always told that basically what a producer means is you have to produce results.
Well, yeah, I don't think I heard that before, but sure, that's true. I think that being a producer is, there is an idea of for a movie, and everything that's involved in taking that idea from just the thinking of it stage into a movie theater falls into the category of what does a producer do? He has to find a way to get everything done, otherwise, it doesn't get done. So it's a very large, all-encompassing job that can be done very well or very badly. It's a title that's often thrown around, but people that are hands-on producers are a very special kind of person.
So from what you're saying, this is Last House on the Left was definitely an independent film, and,
Yeah.
and you had to be hands on the whole time. Now, is there any part of that movie that you were a part of yourself that people didn't know or didn't see? Did you ever have to fill in or be a stand-in?
Oh, on Last House?
Yeah.
Um, Maybe, but I don't think so. I mean, no, I didn't do any kind of a Hitchcock walk through or anything like that. But no, the film was very small, very contained, so it wasn't as if we had a whole bunch of mob scenes or scenes in shopping centers and the like. It was all very quietly done, off in the woods and in a personal house.
Now, being a producer, were you the one that found the house?
Um, yeah, well, it was. I don't think it was a friend of a friend. And says, "Hey, we want to shoot a movie." Oh, really? Great. Well, my parents are going to be out of town next week. I think it was a friend of Steve Miner's, but I mean that's how we got the house. It was just who knew somebody who had a house that would let us shoot in it.
And how long was the shoot? How much was the budget?
Oh, I don't remember how long the shoot was. Probably around 30 days, 25, 30 days, and the budget was around $50,000, a little less.
And if I remember correctly, once it finally hit theaters, you're talking millions.
Yeah, but that's not doesn't come. That gets split up 75 different ways before it hits us. But we came out of it making money and with um, some notoriety, which was sort of a double-edged sword. But we had learned a bunch, and we just moved on from there.
And did you have anything to do with the ad campaign?
Yeah, but the we had two or three different ad campaigns, and nothing that was working. And then one night, the guy called me from Ohio, who was managing the movie in several test states in Ohio. He says, "Sean, what if we call it Last House on the Left?" And I said, "What?" It's like, what the hell does that even mean? Um, and I said, but if what you're doing doesn't work, then you try something else. So I said, sure, let's give it a shot. And so he came up with that title, and then he put this little graphic in that goes, it's only a movie, it's only a movie, it's only a movie, and I think that's really what sold it, and it's because when uh, the the guy in Ohio, when he showed it to his wife, he reported that that's what she kept saying to herself when she was watching it, and that's how that ad came to be, and
And I certainly would encourage anybody in the chat who hasn't watched the movie or hasn't heard it on YouTube. The actual radio spots are listed. For
oh,
those of you for those of you who are fans of it, probably caught the intro by Nurse Bridge, that we just basically kind of bastardized it and put it in there. Um, but incredibly effective campaign, and this was a time when drive-ins still existed. There was word of mouth. It wasn't your movie sits in for 8 weeks and then they start figuring out what the special features are going to be on the DVD and Blu-ray.
hmm
Um,
yeah.
what was the longevity? How long did it last in theaters?
Oh well, the film distribution at the time um, would be that you'd get a print or get a half a dozen prints or as many as you could afford, and you would open it in a market, and it'd be a small market. And you'd take your 6 prints, put them in 6 theaters, and take out ads in the local newspapers and put up pictures in the lobby of the theater and run a trailer maybe. And then, Wednesday would come around and you'd open up the movie and see how you did. Now, the idea was if you didn't do very well, then you say, okay, what's wrong with the advertising campaign? You change that somehow. In Last House, we changed the title a couple of times, and then you would take whatever money you had at the end of the week from being in those movie theaters and go on to another market and do the same thing again. And the idea is that hopefully at the end of the week you have more money than you had at the start of the week. And so once you had confidence that your advertising worked, you would go to bigger markets and you'd buy more prints, and you might go to New York and run for 3-4 weeks. And then you go from there to Boston, and from there to Milwaukee or some other place. And the movie could be playing around at that point in time. Movies would run for a year and a half sometimes longer. But they would just be in theaters in certain areas. The whole notion of a national release didn't exist until Jaws.
Yeah, I know a lot of. I'm kind of old enough to where I do remember roadshow pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Basically,
yeah.
Driving from town to town, and gosh, I'm trying to think of his name. The guy who was the king of the roadshow pictures. He would hook up gimmicks.
Yeah. Not sure. Was it Charlie Band?
No, I'm thinking older. William,
yeah. I know. He had I know the guy who I've forgotten.
Yeah, he's the one who did the Tingler.
Right. There would be a nurse in the lobby, and there'd be an ambulance parked out front for those that were just too scared to watch.
Oh, William Castle.
That's who it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys ever create any type of gimmick like that to help sell it when you came into town?
Well, I didn't. Although so, some friends of mine had some movies, and they had all kinds of nonsense. But I'm thinking of they used to, they have airline sickness bags.
Oh, yeah.
They handed those out for one movie. I didn't have anything to do with the movie, but I love the notion. But yeah, I think it was a question of create an event and hopefully people come and see it. It changed a lot in the late 70s, early 80s, and it has become more. Movies have a very, very short half-life now.
Oh yeah, that's undoubted. I mean, I know, like just for an example, was it 1938? Gone with the Wind played for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
in theaters for that long, and now movies, even if they're blockbusters, will spend a cup of coffee in a regular theater, go to a discount theater, and then a month later you're seeing it on DVD. Do you
Yeah.
think that type of business model has in any way damaged independent filmmaking?
Oh, well, yeah. You have to back up a little bit. The fact that you could have national releases was a huge shot in the arm for independent filmmaking initially. But over time, what happened was that the movies became more and more expensive, and that the advertising became grossly expensive. And so it became harder and harder to get a distribution company to put up the necessary money to release a film, no matter what the film costs. Because if the movie costs, let's say, $2 million, but it still costs $20 million to release it, then they have to put up $22 million for your movie, and your movie may never do that kind of business. So I think that that the the cost of advertising and the cost of negatives in general as almost precludes the participation of the small independent film that catches fire. Every year, one or two will catch fire, but it's really so much the exception.
Well, and
It's not a business that you can really be in, I don't think.
I would think that the modern day model would be Blair Witch because they legit um, took a very very low budget movie and their advertising. They were one of the first ones that got onto the internet, and
Yeah, I think they probably were. And but the funny thing about them is that they went to repeat it 2 years later and couldn't. Nobody wanted to come.
yeah.
It was absolute novelty at first, but but it just ran out of gas. But yeah, I mean, I don't have the dates to track it, but my goodness, um, 1 second, hold on.
Sure. And of course, I just wanted to say, since we were running a little bit late, the Q and A is going to run a little bit late as well. Everybody in the chat is definitely welcome to put the questions in. I'll give you the 5 minute warning when we're going to do the Q and A. So if you do have a question for Sean Cunningham, please do feel free. Think it up. Write it down for right now because I'm going to forget. I'm going to lose it in the scroll. But I want to make sure that we can get that answered for you. And now there's I'm always curious between the hits, and not to make it a condescending term, but for the downtime. What's that like for a producer? I'm sure that you're probably um, you're probably doing the hustle, trying to find what that next good project is going to be. Were you an active seeker, or since you had success with Last House on the Left, did you have people coming to you more than you going out to find projects?
Oh, well, let me be really clear about that. I made a little bit of money and a little bit of notoriety with Last House on the Left, but the reputation that came with it was very, very unfortunate. And it became, um, oh, you know, if you want puke in a bucket and you want it cheap, I got just the right guy for you.
Oh,
That was pretty much uh, the professional benefit I got from Last House. No, and you know before Last House and immediately afterwards, and all the way up to Friday the 13th, it was always a question of going from one project to the next, try to find a way to keep going. And it wasn't, there was no deep pocket or some financier or something. You just you get an idea and then you try to find some people that might put money up for it, and then hopefully make them some money, and then maybe you can do it again. And if you can't, then you have to figure out something else. It's and after Friday the 13th, I was offered several sort of low budget um, horror films that I didn't really, I wasn't thrilled with much of that stuff, and I was always trying to develop something else, and very rarely successful. But you're always trying to find a way um, find a movie that you can, not just that you like, but that you like and that you can get made.
Well, basically trying to break out of what the industry was trying to pigeonhole you into.
Nah, I don't think so. I mean, yes, people they say eh, it doesn't work that way. What happens is that if you're successful doing something, in my case, it was horror. Um, then if you are a buyer, somebody at a distribution company, and you're going to make a horror movie, you look for somebody who made a successful horror movie. If you're going to do a love story, you don't start looking for somebody who made a successful horror movie. You lose your job in an hour. you know. So so what happens is that we got Friday the 13th, and then I did another sort of I don't know thriller would be called Strangers Watching,
Yes.
and and then I wanted to do I didn't want to do something bright and fun and sunny, and I wound up developing a movie that I got made called Spring Break,
Mm-hmm.
and it was I don't know it was sort of a beach blanket bingo wannabe. Uh, but that was because I wanted to do something different. And so, especially if you want to do something different, you're going to have to take the responsibility for doing it yourself. And that's I'm talking about as a producer. And successful producers can produce a whole variety of different types of things. Directors a little bit different. You really tend to get known for a certain kind of brand, and I think it's the notion that you want to hire somebody that intuits what the audience wants. You know that you want to find somebody that has proven that your intuition was good enough to make you millions of dollars on something called Friday the 13th. And we got 35 people around here, and none of them have been able to do that. So let's get that guy back and make him do something else. And because he must know something about the audience. It's that's the perception. That's not necessarily the case, but that's how that works.
Well, and it did look like that you were trying to spread your wings, so to speak, with with movies like Here Come the Tigers and Manny's Orphans.
Right.
Um, and by the way, anybody who's looking for those movies, they have been re-released. The only movie
Oh
that I
God help us.
yeah, the only one that I've not been able to find in any decent way was Art of Marriage.
I would stop looking now.
But so I mean, you're still flexing as a producer. You're still
Hmm.
flexing as a director.
Hmm.
Um, did you were you pulled in one direction or another, or were you drawing back on your theater roots that said, hey, I can do all of this?
No, I think that producing is what I have to do to survive. Um, Directing is something that I can do every once in a while and would like to do more of, um, but it's a very different kind of energy than being the producer, and you kind of um, you better really love the script because you're gonna be in bed with it for a long time. And if it's dark and ugly, yeah, and you don't like it, then it's a good thing to stay away from. It's a very bad idea unless you love the material.
So you definitely felt more comfortable being the plate spinner, being the producer.
Yeah, and I can I thought I could just hire a director if I need a director, and depends on the kind of material I'm trying to get done. It's not nearly as easy as it sounds, but that's nevertheless that's the process. And if you're a director, and you direct a movie, my goodness, you're out of commission for I don't know, at least a year. And I had to keep irons in the fire. And there's a
Well, it gets you moving.
yeah.
And what is it? Idle hands are the devil's playground. So,
Something like that. Yeah.
and let me give you the opportunity to grab a drink here real quick. I'll fill in time with what I usually do, which is if you are unfamiliar with Mr. Cunningham's work, we are going to be talking about his latest project. He's not going to get away before we talk about this because I've seen the movie and I do find it important. It's something that definitely needs to be talked about. But of course, we do have links down there. We've got links to the Facebook. There's a link to the trailer to the nurse with the purple hair. The Instagram is there as well, the Twitter, and of course his production company, Crystal Lake Entertainment. Also, if you're of the mind, I have my links down there for my Twitter. You can follow me there. There's a Streamlabs, of course, and if you want to buy the best in bootleg Medicare merchandise, go to my TeePublic store. But also, very important, down beneath that, there is the prescription for additional entertainment. As your fellow doctor, I prescribe people that I like to watch online. Those YouTube content creators who are doing something special, doing something unique. There's a ton of names down there. Go take a look, pick and click after this is done, and please support these people because they're a lot like independent film at this point. And the only way that they're ever going to get recognized for the great things that they do is through your support. So please go ahead and check them out as well. Um, I know this time had to come, and uh, I know I've said behind the scenes that Friday the 13th is an important puzzle piece, but not as important as the big picture of your career. But timeline wise, we're there. Um, when you started with Friday the 13th, was it what is it a script submission? Was it something that you actively searched, or something that landed on your desk?
No. What happened was I had made Last House on the Left 8 years earlier, and I wanted to do other things, and I had tried to do Hansel and Gretel, and I made a couple of children's films, a baseball film and a soccer film. And in the course of doing them, you change a title, you change an ad campaign, something, and in making lists of the titles, once I wrote the title Friday the 13th. I said, shit, if I had a movie called Friday the 13th, I know how to sell that. And sort of put it aside. I was working on the soccer movie at the time, but when the soccer movie was done, I was trying to figure out what to do next, and uh, I said, well, I don't know. Let's try. Can we do Friday the 13th? And in order to find out, I drew up an advertisement in Variety, full page ad, and it's Friday the 13th, the most terrifying film ever made, available December or something like that. And I basically the idea was to see if anybody squawked and if a lawyer called or somebody told me I couldn't use the title. And in fact, the only thing that happened was that people expressed interest in buying the movie. So I said, okay, let's see if we can get this made. And I called my friend Victor Miller, and he had worked with me on the two children's films. And I said, "You want to try this? You want to see if we can get a scary movie?" And he said, "Yeah." And we um, started sketching it out. And we were shooting about 3 months later, maybe less. And
Well,
that's how it happened.
well, and the thing that I found interesting, because of course, Friday the 13th is one of the movies that is credited for starting the slasher genre, but Friday the 13th, the original movie, and I'm sure everybody who's out there has seen it. If you have not seen it, then you certainly need to do so because um, it was a lot of reviews just called it a mindless slasher film, but it actually wasn't. There really was a story. The identity of the killer was something that was rare and unique. And I thought, I mean, really, I thought the screenplay for what's been considered a low budget film was definitely shooting for a higher mark. Was that something that you encouraged him to write? To say, let's just not make it, the gas station attendant.
Oh no, it was. Uh, I suppose at the back of our mind, we were trying to tell a story. It'd be like Ten Little Indians or some kind of a whodunit. But
Oh, that's a
um,
wonderful movie
a-
too.
and but we didn't have. What we were trying to do is create a little roller coaster ride and do set pieces where um, you we could we could tease the audience along and strangely enough it was you call it fun, but in some ways it's like being in the bushes and hiding until somebody comes along and you go boo. um, and it was to be sure it was meant to be something that we could make and fill in the time until we got back to the children's movie or something else. I don't think I surely didn't think of it as something that was going to, be a phenomenal success or any kind of a success. It was going to get made, and then you kind of hope for the best. So it was just in the course of um, doing staying alive in its own way, and, and that's what happened. And then out from that, all kinds of other things just exploded. But there had never been the kind of success that we got with Friday the 13th. And so much of it was just time and place and pure luck. But
Well,
I'm
well,
very grateful.
and I'm curious. Did the Italian Giallo films have any influence on what you wanted to do directorially?
I'm sorry, which film?
The Italian
Dark.
Giallo films.
Oh, no. Had never seen any of the. I never saw any of that. Italian um, horror or gore cinema till much later. And it wasn't. I didn't even know about it, and when I did see it, it didn't. I wasn't interested. It just didn't speak to me. I was. It's a different kind of movie. It's a different kind of audience.
Yeah, because the birth of or the rebirth of horror, because horror had essentially been dead since Universal Monsters.
Hmm.
And the three that are always notable when it comes up to the slasher film is definitely Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, and Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
um,
I think that John Carpenter was the one who really turned the corner because he before Friday the 13th, he made this little um, movie which is just so small, but so effective, and it was so engaging. Um, that you say, my goodness, you don't have to have, you know, universal monsters and people like Vincent Price going around chewing up the scenery. What if you did something very small, very realistic? You could really create a good little story, and it was uh, it was based on Carpenter's success that I thought that making Friday the 13th was a viable idea. Not that we were trying to imitate what John did with Halloween, but what we were trying to do is understand that for a very limited budget, and if you shot it smart, you might be able to do something that nobody else had done, and that um, that's how we got from here to there.
Well, and business being business, you want to see what the market bears, and what's going to be the best return for your investment.
Right. But there was no precedent for um, Friday the 13th cost $500,000, and if we had ever doubled our money, it would have been a huge hit. And and we had no understanding that it could take off and become what it became very quickly. It was just remarkable.
Well, I do have to say that out of the three films that I cited, Halloween was definitely influential. Texas Chainsaw Massacre made a dent, but after Friday the 13th, the slasher genre exploded.
Yeah.
Um, and you get the praise and the blame, like you were saying previously. When you did Last House on the Left, it was kind of a dual-edged sword. Um, did you find that the pigeonholing became more severe, or since you were making box office bank, it was like, oh well, we really need to get this guy now.
Oh yeah, it's all about the money. If I was pigeonholed at all, I was pigeonholed as being a young, very successful director, and then you're only as good as your last movie or the movie before that. But so I had a lot of opportunities right after Friday the 13th, which I didn't realize at the time. It was only 2020 hindsight that um, I I recognized that opportunity, but.
Now,
Um,
between the difference between a director and a producer, does a director get more stigmatized than a producer?
Yes. I mean, it cuts both ways, but whether it's true or not, the director um, is given so much of the individual credit in a movie in which, oh my goodness, sometimes hundreds of people are involved. Um, but it falls on his or her shoulders, and lots of times the movie can be lousy, and it's not the director's fault at all. But you have lost your touch or something. What they really mean is that it's like somebody that's at the crap table, and uh, and he rolls a couple of numbers and it works great, and you're really hot, and all of a sudden you roll snake eyes, and you're out of the game, and they move on to the next shooter.
Well, do you do you ever think that anything that you've been uh, part of as a straight up producer, that you could have made better, but were limited by those around you, especially the cash cows.
um Ask me that question another way. You mean as a producer, do I I'm not sure I understand the question.
Um, it, it, a movie that you were part of as a producer,
Hmm.
where you're like, oh yeah, we can do this. This is going to be successful, and then somebody pulled the purse string shut.
Oh, no. That's I mean that's always kind of a fear, and you always have to be working inside a budget, and the budget is very often not what you would like it to be. But if a movie, uh, like everybody wants to make a good movie, and when you're in the middle of it, you often don't know. But what you do know is when you start out, if a movie can't be good, you know that. It's either going to be bad or worse, and that's an unfortunate place to be, but that's where you are sometimes. And so I don't think that any I don't think a lack of funding has ever been a reason for one of my films not to be successful. um, I think um, the absence of success that I might have had could have come with using more talented or bigger name actors, which raises the budget and does a whole bunch of other things. But I um, always uh, tried to just go with the strength of the story, and 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 hopefully the actors would be good enough to sell the strength of the story.
Now, I was having a discussion. I also host a show very very early in the morning, called the Insomnia Ramble Stream, and we got into a discussion about, um, when you break down the budget of a movie. Um, it was an argument that usually it's the talent that has the biggest chunk. From your actual experience, if you were going to break it down, just roughly per percentage wise, if you were making a blockbuster, big budget Hollywood film,
Mm.
about how much of that percentage would be spent on talent?
Well, much higher than you would think. It's they get they command, or depends on the week, but um, stars are very expensive, and as as it's been, I can't. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, just one. Oh gosh,
Does it
I
does it
wasn't sitting in the mat, but anyway, he said stars count, and that's true. They really do, and it's very expensive. And then on top of that, other things start to become expensive in the last 10 years. The intellectual properties become very expensive just to have access to them. If you're going to do, say, Spider-Man, and you're going to pay millions of dollars just to uh, try it. Um, and then the look and feel of movies has gotten so huge that um, that you just everything costs so much money. As a percentage, I would say in a normal, let's say in a normal romantic comedy, no car chases, no explosions. But let's say it's going to be going back in time. But say Pretty Woman, Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. Um, I would bet that their salaries were easily 20 to 25% of the budget, maybe even more. But the rest of the budget was relatively manageable.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that that's probably still true on a $50 million uh, movie. You're probably still going to be paying 15 or $20 million in star salaries, assuming that you're hiring people like Jack Nicholson or to play the next door neighbor. you know.
Well, and it's like the biggest star right now is Dwayne Johnson, The Rock,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he nets between 25 and 30 million a picture.
That's what I heard. Yeah. And it's just, but he's a brand and he's very smart about himself. And those numbers are really, really high, but um, it's, it's all because at some level he's worth it. And it's not, you know, nobody has to pay him that kind of money. If you don't want to pay him the money, don't.
Well, yeah,
It's
price
and
drives the market.
yeah. I mean, he's very smart and he's very charming and he's good at his job. And if you want to put him in your movie, um, you're going to have to pay that. There's an interesting thing I learned about the stars, um, and that was a friend of mine had uh, become a head of a studio. And we had grown up the industry together, and we were just talking about what was going on in it. And I don't know, he wanted to hire somebody. I don't remember who it was. It was Jim Carrey or Robert Williams or Billy Crystal, somebody. And I said, "Well, how much they get?" And he said, In this case, it was $8 million. I say, $8 million. That's crazy. He says, yeah, but that's not the problem. And I said, oh, really? He says, nah. He says, anybody who gets $8 million to do a movie doesn't need your $8 million. you know. So if you want to hire Dwayne Johnson to be in your movie, you say, "Oh man, I got to get $25 million." Well, yeah, but I mean that's your ante in the game. But why is he going to make your movie? Because lots of other people are willing to pay him that, or he doesn't have to work. So you can't just show up with a lousy package or something that's not going to show him off to his best advantage. And there's so many subtle reasons why a star will decide to do one movie and not another. But it certainly is not limited to the money. The money is almost incidental if the star is big.
Oh, certainly. And I'd like to give the chat the 5 minute warning. Q&A is coming up in 5, so please make sure and have your questions ready. And we will make sure to get them asked. I know there's quite a few fans that are in the chat, and wow, this is a long road, people. We haven't even got through a third of the career yet, and the career is
Well,
technically still going. So um, now one of my favorites, and I'm doing this as personal fan service, was Deep Star Six.
mm,
I liked that movie. I liked the way it was set up. It was paced very well. It was very, to me, it was very claustrophobic.
hmm
Um, when you chose this, is this the one where when you were a producer, you decided, well, yeah, I want to direct this too. This one's mine.
no, it was just the opposite. I was the producer, and it was about 2 weeks from shooting, and the director had to leave to do something else, and the studio and I talked about what we're going to do or who we would get or how far back it would push it, and it became like, well, Sean, why don't you do it? Can you do this? And at that point, I thought I could because I had been, hands on the project for 6 months or something like that. So I did take it on, um, and but I was not my first choice. That's for sure.
Um, I find that very humbling that you say that you weren't your first choice, but when you got into it, um, and I know people say that it's like riding a bicycle. Once you learn how to do it, it's pretty easy to get back on. As a director, did you personally, before you started shooting even a foot of film, did you write down some challenges, something that you wanted to do that you hadn't done, something whether visually or storytelling wise that you wanted to push forward or to experiment as an artist?
Well, a little bit. I think that the the movies that you will direct the best are the movies that you enjoy the most. That in terms of a genre, if you're a director, you can probably direct any script that somebody gives you, but some will you will direct an awful lot better than others. Um, and um, when you say it's like riding a bike, you just get right back on it. Well, yeah, some of that stuff is true, but it's really you have if you have a pretty good script and good actors, then the actors give you choices for how you can do a scene. It's not just one way to do a scene,
Sure.
and that sense of what story are you telling and how do you nurse your story from day to day, from scene to scene. That's sort of very touchy feely stuff, and it varies strongly from one person to another, and it's what makes one one director's work perhaps substantially different than another person doing similar stuff or even doing the same stuff.
So unlike because Hitchcock's theory was, actors are like cattle and should be treated as such.
Yes. Right.
Um, do do you find that when you drop into the director's chair, that you're asking for a collaborative effort?
Yeah, I do, and I think um, I think that it is very common um, for directors to show up on the set and think that they're expected to know everything, because they're the director after all.
Sure.
um, and that's foolish. I think that in a, I think that one of the big things that's left behind is the director shows up and he's sort of like the puppet master, and he will tell the actors where to go and how loud to talk and he has this um, line reading in his head or a sense of where he's going to cut the scene, rather than going on the set and having these wonderful creative artists showing things, and you can try to find some magical stuff and find stuff you never dreamed of, because when you were sitting alone at your desk at night, looking at the words on a piece of paper, you have no idea what they're really going to sound like in context, and you should embrace those changes. And I think embrace the people on the set, because they're some of the most creative people you'll ever meet.
Yeah, they're legitimately putting it all out there,
They
and
sure are.
we've got people chomping at the bit. So let's jump into a couple of the questions. Um, American Gadfly asks, "What is your favorite scary movie?"
Oh, I think I don't know, favorite, but I think it would be Alien, the first Alien. That was the one that just scared the life out of me. I just I was so surprised and delighted with that movie.
But yeah, I was amazed when I saw it in the theater. I think the thing that is the benefit of age is the fact that we have the ability to go see movies, whereas uh, and I'll say this and I'll stand behind it. The viewing audience now is encouraged to be lazy and wait for it to come out on DVD or some streaming service.
Hmm.
Where I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, being in a theater is an actual experience because you're surrounded by like-minded people. You're in a darkened place, and you're not going anywhere for 2 hours.
Right. I That's surely the case, and being in a theater and experience of film in the theater is very different than just watching on TV. Having said that, the televisions have changed so much, and the sound has changed so much that that you can really enjoy movies at home in ways that you never could even 10 years ago. That being said, being in a theater with a bunch of people and getting the full benefit of the sound and this beautiful picture is sine qua non. I think if you, I don't know, the other night I saw A Star Is Born, and it was just with this incredible soundtrack and the images, and it was just. I am so glad that I got to see it in the theater and not see it at home.
Well, now
And I,
I do have to ask because there's four versions. Are you talking about the most recent one with
yeah,
Lady
I'm
Gaga?
talking. Yes, I am.
Okay.
And I thought that it was. I thought it was in many ways brilliant. I mean, I loved the first hour of that movie was just to die for.
Well, now I have to ask this. On the flip side, what what's your number one movie that after as you were walking out of the theater, you said, "Damn, I wish I would have made that one."
Oh, I don't think I've ever said that. Um, I love walking out of a movie saying, "Holy cow, that was great! How did they do that? That was wonderful." I never. It's it's not a zero sum game where if somebody does something really good, that means you can't do something really good.
Sure.
I am absolutely shocked and delighted at um, the incredible talent and wit of some of the filmmakers, as represented by the stuff that you see. Um, and some of the stuff that you see is uh, it's um, well, it depends if it's the cinematography, or so often it's, for me, it's the script. Um, I can't imagine how people can create scripts that are as good as they are sometimes. It's just marvelous.
Um, a wild fox appears asks, um, would you take a look at my channel? I want to make some good movies. Um, I've got a feeling that he's a little busy right now, and we're gonna get into his latest project too. We're not gonna escape by not paying attention to it because, like I said previously, it's definitely worthwhile and it's definitely worth a look. Um, let's see here.
To answer the guy who said, "Would you look at my YouTube?" Maybe, but there are now. I mean, there are so many different um, places, and so much stuff that's being presented that, um, yeah, an individual has to ask themselves, "Why am I doing this?" Well, if I was doing it as a favor, there'd be one thing. If I was doing it because I was trying to teach somebody something, it would be another. If it was because I had money burning a hole in my pocket and I just needed to find somebody somebody that I could support, surely. Um, but I'll say this, that one of the myths, I think, in the movie business is that if you if you're a nice person and seem to be talented, um, and you often go to film school, get a good education, and have a ton of potential, that if you hang in there, somebody's going to give you that break, your first movie, your first job. And I promise you, that's never going to happen. Just never. What's going to happen is, it used to be that if you were fortunate enough to make a successful movie, whatever kind, that might really help launch you. Um, at this point, you almost have to make two successful things, that you become the darling of film festivals and that kind of thing. But really, you're going to have to keep producing, which is to say, find the money, find the script, find the idea, and find the way to make it on your own. And then you're going to have to find a way to make another one and another one and another one until maybe someday, somebody gives you a shot at say, um, a 1 hour TV thing. Um, it's very, very, if you're doing if you're creating a weekly television show, or you're creating, there's so much money at stake. There's no reason for you to hire somebody with a little bit of experience and maybe some potential. You can hire really experienced people with proven potential. And so, why would you hire somebody that was just starting out? You wouldn't. You'd pat him on the back and say, "Gee, keep it up, kid. I'd love to see what you do next, and or in the time after that, or the time after that." So, just remember that, if you have all of this education and desire to do good, then you have to go out there and do it. There's no other way, none.
Well, and that follows along with because I preach this every show because I do interview interesting people from all walks of life, and there's the saying that I have is you have to flex your pec, which is you have to have passion for what you do. Um, you I'm sorry, you have to have passion for what you do. You have to make the effort to do that, and then you have to be committed to see it all the way through. Um, those three things, basically, make someone, if not financially successful, at least personally successful, to be able to go along and, well, become the success that they want to be. But you really, you've got to get the scraped knuckles. You have to roll up the sleeves. If it's something that you really truly believe in, then you're going to have to make your personal sacrifices to get there and to get it done. And next week, I'll be interviewing Jim Wynorski, and Jim's made over 150 films,
Mm-hmm.
and he's found personal satisfaction in what he's doing. Not necessarily success, but if people keep hiring him over and over again, it's kind of like a proven commodity.
Mm-hmm.
But Naomi, the wonderful Naomi Diaz, has asked, what was it like to work with Roy Scheider?
Oh, it was a delight. He was a young man, he was kind, and he wasn't terribly full of himself. But seeing somebody with that kind of talent take Shakespeare and make it into theater, not just funny sounding scenes, was it was just so eye opening. I think that he really turned me on to not just what Shakespeare could be, but what theater could be, and on the obvious level, how valuable it is to have an accomplished actor saying words. That's how it works.
Yeah,
And if you do it, if the actor's any good, you don't realize how hard he's working to create that impression.
and even in the at the end of his career, in the movies that were truly really bad, he still shined.
Oh yeah, he was terrific.
Numa Numa asks, um, and this comes into the reading part of your life.
Mm.
Do you like Stephen King, and what are your thoughts on Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft?
Well, let's see. Start with Stephen King. I'm I love so much what Stephen King does, and he writes so well. What he does that works for me is, he creates characters that I feel that if I met him on the street, they would be very, very real. Um, he he has created his own brand, and so that lots of times he has a little story that he doesn't leave well enough alone. He turns it into a Stephen King story, so he adds another layer of supernatural, unexplained phenomenon, something in it, and sometimes that works really well, sometimes not. I think that a lot of his more recent stuff is really just wonderful stuff. I think he did the I think it's called Mercedes Man. There's a series of three um, stories about a guy, uh, a mass killer, but uh, he's a wonderful, disciplined craftsman. Um, Lovecraft is writes wonderful science fiction, which I didn't appreciate until I got much older. And you recognize that good science fiction deals with issues that are very pertinent in the day, and they are written large, and you have the safety of looking at issues that you can't see as clearly if they were told in modern day. But in science fiction, God is in the details, and it can be just wonderful, wonderful writing. Poe, um, I read Poe in college, and it was okay, but it never really he never really got to me the way he gets to other people. I you know, there's always the telltale heart and things like that. But um, I was fascinated with him as a person, and his writing was very special. But I guess it didn't speak to me as a modern audience.
And Naomi follows up. Now, Naomi, I can probably answer this. I think if you keep your ear to the ground, you might be able to meet up with Sean at because he does occasionally do the circuit for horror conventions. So if you'd like to get your original copy of Friday the 13th signed, I'm sure if you meet him in real life that he will be happy to take care of that for you.
True enough.
I have a I have the big book of Crystal Lake Memories.
Ah,
Beautiful book, and
isn't it?
I have a couple signatures on it.
Well,
I won't lie,
well,
but it's a beautiful book too.
it is.
I
It
mean,
is.
that definitely that definitely treats a piece of your career as something that should be um, revealed as genius. Be,
I don't know about that, but
well,
yeah,
you
it's. I was around for, you know, uh, for the production of that book, which I these are guys that just loved the material and had such respect for it, and were so determined to do a really good job, and and in fact they did. And it was like, all right, and I am. I to this day I am very grateful to what the guys did. I think they did a terrific job.
and yeah, I bought the first pressing of it, and at the time we were trying to sell a very crappy vampire movie that I was acting in, and
Uh-huh.
it gave me the opportunity to go to horror conventions and
Hmm.
slide in and get some signatures. Kane's on there, Tom Savini's on there, um, and Harry Manfredini, of course, wonderful man, is completely underrated as well. Um, let's see here. Irate Prostate asks, "Wow, okay, that's kind of out there.
High
How
rate
op-
prostate. I love it.
and he is also a very excellent YouTuber and interviewer. He does a great show. Matter of fact, he's got multiple shows on, and I enjoy every one of them. He asks, "How open was the Weinstein secret?"
Um, I think I don't know how open, but it was. I think it was perceived as a cost of doing business. That he was just a difficult man. Where the both brothers are perceived to be difficult. Um, I don't think anybody knew the very specific, um, or I never heard the very specific stuff that came out in the hashtag Me Too. But it was it was it was a shame. And they were instrumental in bringing so many wonderful things to the screen. But boy, I don't know. I
Well,
don't know.
it falls back to, and you hear stories all the time about '50s contract players and the casting couch.
Yeah,
So
those are
I
the days gone.
a nice Busby Berkeley musical. Uh, uh, American Gadfly asks, "How hot is Amy Steele in person, or was that just makeup?"
Very hot. I mean, that was then, but I mean, she's still a beautiful woman and and a very nice person.
Okay. I don't know if the kids are getting tired or not. But the next question is from TrippyCast. He also is in the links down for the prescription for additional entertainment. He asks, "Could Batman win in a fight against Jason?"
Oh, come on, no way, no way.
He just keep coming.
Oh yeah, forget about it.
Uh,
Forget about it.
let's see. Oh well, this is a great question. What is your opinion on the state of horror movies today?
My opinion is that um, that horror movies in general, I mean across the board, suffer from some pretty bad writing, and that uh, when when a horror film uh, has a good script, suddenly it becomes, a sci-fi thriller or something else. Um, it's that we often um, think that because it's a horror film, then you just have to increase the body count or something like that. You're forgiven from the obligation of telling a good story. And I have read so many um, poor scripts, and they're just poorly written. And it's I think that when when the scripts are good, then it gets the acting talent, the directing talent, and so on. So it really comes down to how good or bad the stories are.
Certainly. I've seen a little bit too much formulaic to cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Now I know we can go back to the old Roger Cormans from the late 50s, early 60s. They were formulaic, but uh, there was just something about seeing a space alien in a diving helmet, or a teenage werewolf. At least it was diverse, and you really just didn't know, where it was going. Bucket of Blood is still one of my favorite movies because it literally just encapsulates the time that it was made, and to me, it was one of the first tongue-in-cheek horror movies.
Mhm. Well, that was then. I think that it's it's I don't know. It's different. We're so used to you can do so much with special effects and all that. Reasons why you might have enjoyed horror movies disappear when you've subtracted the magic from it.
Sure.
And it used to be enough to do a really great magic trick, but it's not anymore. You have to be willing to tell a story.
Yeah, I think people get a little bit too much wrapped up into the hyper realism of things, and forget the fact that movies are fantasy.
Yeah, and they're why you're going to give somebody 2 hours of your life. You want something back for it.
Oh, sure. Oh, here's a great question. Numa Numa asks, "What are your thoughts on Ingmar Bergman?"
Well, I I would say that by and large, his movies are grim, and I think it's a world view that he has, um, and a lot of other people share. But he tells stories about people getting through very very difficult times, and often without the satisfaction of a happy ending. So I think that, and but he was inspirational and clearly a genius, um, and I uh, I think that his material itself is not most of it's not fun to watch. The reason it's not fun to watch is it's done so well. you
Uh,
know?
yeah, he was a beautiful visual stylist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see him not getting invited to parties.
Yeah.
Now I do want to put, guys. I'm going to put kind of a hold on the questions because I want to make sure we have enough time to discuss Sean's new project, The Nurse with the Purple Hair. I was fortunate enough. I got to see the film, and uh, I can tie it in because my Irish twin sister that I talk about all the time on the IRS, she has been a hospice nurse for a decade, and I sent it over to her to get the reaction, and she actually said, well, first and foremost, The people who help sponsor this film are the people that she actually works with. And second, she was like, yes, this is a brilliant piece of film just because of the fact that too many people have too many misconceptions about what hospice is about. So I want to deep dive into this, Sean. Um, what uh, what started you off? I know you had a meeting with her, um, but what was the actual physical pull to where you said I have to make a movie about this?
Um, I'm going to just back up a little bit. I think that what I discovered in all of this stuff is that um, maybe the biggest secret in modern medicine is hospice and hospice care. And it's so important, and yet it's something that so little is known about it, and people stay away from it. And uh, in my particular case, I knew a little bit about hospice, but I didn't really know much. And I met this wonderful person named Michelle Lasota, who is the nurse with the purple hair, and I talked to her about her job because what the hell are you doing? You're doing hospice work. Isn't that depressing? And she said, no, it's wonderful. And I said, really? Tell me about that. And as you know, and I think you're going to go to work every day and watch somebody else die, so you failed again. And she said, no, 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 no. What 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 it really is that every day I go into work and whoever I'm working with, I get to ask myself, how can I make today the best day possible for this person? And I said, wow, really? And it's I think that is how she looks at her job and how she looks at the world. And I, there was lots and lots of conversation that followed it, and I came out of it feeling that this was a person that really had gained a great deal of wisdom and perspective in her life, and she was interesting and fascinating. And I thought this would be something that I really wanted to share with other people. And so I, you know, said, "All right, Michelle, you want to make a movie?" And she said, uh, "Yeah, sure." And so I went about, shooting footage of her and other people involved in hospice care, and it's a very big field, and it encompasses a whole bunch of really important things that we know so little about. But I think that all of us would benefit so much if we knew more about it.
I cannot disagree. Um, it's especially the stories that come in, which on the on the outside, if you're looking in, they seem incredibly depressing and very morose. But I believe his name was Frank.
Right.
Um, the story that she tells about Frank is pretty much as uplifting as any story that I've ever heard. It's very human. It's very passionate, and that's the thing that I found in this. I mean, it is a documentary, people, but it's not one of those. It's dry in no way. It's not like, okay, let's get to the next part. You want to know as you go along on this film what's going to happen next, and there are very heartfelt stories that are told by not just Michelle, but by other hospice care people, a hospice chaplain, and it's a story that I'll just come out and say it. I think it's buried because we don't want to talk about it because it's uh, basically charging up our fear of our mortality. And these people are there at the end of other people's lives. I'll say this right now. As of tonight, they moved my mother to hospice. She's not coming back out. but I have complete and total faith in the fact, because I've known my sister all my life, and she's been hospice for a decade. That I know that when she goes in there, she's not just going to be treated as a living being that you have to wait for it to die. Um, it's She's being treated as a person who needs to have the warmth and comfort, and needs to, if nothing else, just have that listening, that open ear for somebody to talk about their life and to share those good times before they pass to wherever they're going. And I got choked up in a few places. I'll admit it. Um, I thought it was brilliant, and now here's the thing too, and I will give you definite kudos on this. This wasn't a cheap heartstring pull. You let people, as the director, you let people tell their stories, and you could not help but be enraptured in what they were saying and become involved in what they were doing. And as a person on the outside, as an audience member, um, I mean, really, how do you do something like that? Is that just catching lightning in a bottle?
Um, yeah, but it's more than that. It's um, first of all, thank you for your kind words, and to people who haven't seen this movie, and I know that most of you have not. I hope you will. If you go to the Nurse with the Purple Hair .com, you'll see the trailer, right? Or maybe we have the trailer up. And if you can, then take a look at it. It's on Amazon, and we're going to be making it more widely available. But it's it's this isn't the movie wasn't made to be medicine that should be taken, that's going to taste bitter, but it'll be good for you. It can't be that. um, it had I kind of take you along on my journey as I discovered who these people were and what they thought about, and how moved and touched I was by what they did and what they thought and what they said. And uh, I've got further and further into this world of these special people. And one of the things they deal with is just incredible pain and heartbreak that comes from ignorance. And that if we know more, so much of that pain and anxiety and fear disappears. Every one of us was born, and every one of us is going to die. Now, if you just compare the process of being born, we have so much information about how it works and how universal it is and how long the labor should be and how many days is gestation, and we all kind of share these same facts. um, and we have similar information available about dying, that there's certain things that happen to all of us, and exactly and on a certain progression and so on. And just knowing what's normal makes so much of the fear disappear. And of course there's a great deal of sadness, but subtract some of the fear, and then you're left with what's happening, and understanding in a much better, more clear way. And a lot of these people are there to help us understand, and to be guides, and to hold our hands, and do all kinds of other things. And it's a wonderful gift to know that these people are in the world doing their work. So if I had any message at all, I'd say find a hospice worker. If you ever do, give him or her a hug, because they earn it.
And just to
That goes
reiterate
for you.
down,
That goes for your twin sister as well.
yeah, my Irish twin sister, we fight like you would not believe, but there's still a lot of love there, and she's kind of brought me to tears with some of the stories that she shared with me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, God
but
bless her.
but uh, that gives me the availability to say, hey guys, look down in the descriptor, in the links. You will find not only the Facebook link and the Twitter link to the Nurse with the Purple Hair. I've also gone ahead and included the trailer that's running currently on YouTube. Take a look. You know, it, you can drop a couple of bucks in my Streamlabs, but I would prefer that you guys drop a couple bucks on Amazon so you can watch this and see for yourself and find some of that inspiration, because when you get to the end of your life, a lot of people have very little, and the people who work hospice um, are the people who end up at the very end, before you draw your last breath, help to validate you so you're comfortable with passing on. This is not a Kevorkian kind of deal, people. This is people understanding you, people giving you the time of day instead of shuttling you off from care facility to care facility, waiting for you to stop breathing. And I think that's a very important message that we see in this movie, and something that's really legitimately not talked about a lot. That's the reason why I will champion this. It's something that needs to be seen, and you judge it for yourself. But I've got a good feeling that when you do, you are going to find just as much merit in it as I have. And kudos to you. I think that is a brilliant part. You definitely shine as a director here.
Well, thank you very much. It's it sounds, even hearing you say nice things about it, it still sounds kind of grim. And death is grim, but the movie, I promise you, um, is not hard to watch. And if and I'm asking for an hour of your time, and I promise you. From the bottom of my heart that it's time well spent.
Yeah, there you will be rewarded for spending that time. You will be happy, you will be sad, but you will come away with a revelation that there are people out there, regardless of what's in the news, all the grandstanding, that there are people out there who care about people who are complete strangers.
Yeah,
It does
wonderful.
exist. Let's jump to back to a couple of few questions. I know your time's valuable, so I'll try to speed through these. Um, Understanding that you were flying by the seat of your pants at the time, looking back at what you did, can you confirm that Jason is and always was an undead monster of sorts?
No, I cannot do that. But oh God, Jason at some level is the boogeyman. Is that sort of faceless, nameless fear that's out there, and it's part of our psyche, and
Yeah, he's a
uh,
force of nature.
yeah, yeah, and the boogeyman has different shapes and sizes, but it's just there. It's that thing we can't control. It's that hostile thing we can't control.
Well, and I know I had someone ask me in DMs, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, and you can pass on it if you want. Um, he asked me to ask you if you actually did say that you didn't want the mask on Jason.
That is 100% wrong. I think that I the mask should stay on as much as possible. We don't know. It's it's the faceless part of it. It's I think that the mask is very important, and becomes up to the individuals to fill in the blanks. But um, that's just my own feeling about the iconography.
Well, and I've talked to both Kane Hodder and Ken Kersinger about the switch of Jason's, um, and their answers were pretty much, um, I won't say adversarial, but opposing.
Uh
Um, do you have any feedback on that?
huh.
Because I'll be honest, I don't know once they got to Freddy versus Jason how much actual involvement that you had as a producer.
Um, well, I had a lot. Um, the, um, the the role of Jason was initially just a stunt man in a mask. We're not asking him to do much. We're not asking him to talk and just sort of be there. I think that by the time um, Kane wore the mask, he decided to adopt some special characteristics that he thought would be unique, and he did, and they are unique. And I think that he's probably been the most successful of the people who have worn the mask. Uh, when when we decided to try a different Jason. Part of it was just a marketing stunt that New Line wanted to do. Part of it had to do with the executives at New Line who felt it was important to change certain things. But um, I think that I think that they both did credible jobs. But I think that Jason has such a long history with Kane um, that I'll be very very curious to see if he's able to come back. Kane came back and did all of the Friday the 13th game stuff, and I think it's very characteristic, and he absolutely did a terrific job.
Well, and I will say this because I've been in the presence of both of them. I've interviewed both of them um, uh, uh, for magazines, and uh, Ken Kersinger is a huge boy.
Mm-hmm.
He dwarfs Kane.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really see it as a bad thing because I don't think Kane jumped on until what was it, 5 or 4?
Mm, five, I think.
Okay, and he did 4 of the movies,
Mm-hmm.
but before then the precedent was actually already set. Every movie had a different stuntman
Mm-hmm.
doing Jason.
Mm-hmm.
I think he brought a lot to the character, coming up with the mannerisms that he did, but it was never set in stone that character was his.
Mm-hmm.
And Ken's an incredibly nice guy.
He is.
Very very Canadian. Um, but I mean, one of his things was like, they called me. I had done uh, one stunt previously in a Friday the 13th movie because they didn't want Kane to get hurt. It was, I think it was a car stunt where
Uh,
where he got hit by a car. Um, but they liked him. They came after him. They pursued him. I don't think there was any malice. And from when I talked to Kane, he also said that it wasn't a fact that I was asking for too much money. It's just literally the director was like, I want somebody big. I want somebody imposing. And Kane's a big boy, but he's not as big as Ken Kersinger. Um, and I tell you what, this is a question to you, but if you don't mind, let me go ahead and answer it. Um, I've got. She says I want to gift my copy of the Friday the 13th to a really good friend. Could you ask Mr. Cunningham what I have to do to have him sign it? It would mean the world to him. I have the actual address. Naomi, get a hold of me after the show. I've got the address to Crystal Lake Entertainment, and every review that's ever been on Sean's been a great guy as far as sending stuff to him and giving him the opportunity to sign it. So I don't want to speak for you personally, but I do have that information that I'd be happy to pass on to you. Um,
Yeah, Sean had to step out for just a second. If you send it, what's the name?
Naomi Diaz was the one asking.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out for it.
And by the way,
Hold
this is the right hand of the man. Please do say hi, Christine.
Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying the interview. I have been. Hold on.
So,
So yeah, I
where
hope
are
you
we?
don't mind me passing that along. That's stuff that's
No,
readily
no, that's
available,
fine.
but I think it's you're one of the people on the website. There's actually a rating website about stars and celebrities,
A
and
rating?
huh?
A rating website?
Yeah, a rating website with if you send stuff to people, will they bother to sign it
Oh,
or will they blow you off? And right now, as I'm looking at it, you're ranked out at 5 stars. So
5 stars. Oh my.
five out of five. Every single interaction has been, I sent this picture for him to sign. I sent a copy of Crystal Lake Memories for him to sign, and it came back. Now, please do keep in mind, people, that celebrities actually have a life, so it can take them a little bit of time to get back. Normal turnaround is between 90 and 120 days. So if you are, this is just an FYI. If you do have somebody that you like, if you do want to send them in, a picture or a DVD sleeve to sign or something like that, please do make sure that you allow an appropriate amount of time. Don't be a bunch of butthurt internet monkeys. Um, let's see here. TrippyCast asks, um, how would I wonder how Friday the 13th would have turned out if you would have made it today.
Oh, so like if Friday the 13th were to come out for the first time today, what would happen?
Yes.
Or how would it? Yeah, I just think it would be very old fashioned. It kind of works in time and place, but I don't know how an audience. I mean, when I did Friday the 13th, people had never seen anything quite like it before, and um, now it's um, it's the stuff of sketch comedy. So I don't know. I can't imagine it would do very well.
And of course, kind of peeling off the subject of Freddy versus Jason. Were you upset when Jason lost the fight with Freddy?
He never lost the fight.
Yeah,
We
I
just
agree.
made it look that way, but you know.
Yeah, there's no way that you can do it without damaging both franchise. So it does have to be a push. It's a draw. And one thing that other people might not know, but in Jason Goes to Hell,
Yeah.
the very end scene. Would you like to share that story?
Um. Well, you're talking about the dog,
No, no.
or the hand coming up. The
Yes.
dog is digging around a grave at the very end, in the style maybe of Carrie, and at the very end, shooting out of the ground is the Freddy hand, and in anticipation of the Freddy versus Jason stuff thing that was anticipated.
And whose hand was in that glove?
Boo! I don't remember whose.
Kane Hodder.
It was Kane.
Yep.
Well, of course it was Kane. I don't. I really don't. I really didn't remember that, but that's a good piece of trivia.
Yeah, he got to be Freddy for 5 seconds. Of course,
I remember what I remember about that was my daughter's dog, Tango, the wonder dog.
there you go. You get the family in.
Yeah, the whole family is in. Anyway,
Hmm. Now, I do have to ask this: if Hollywood came knocking on your door,
mm,
and of course, the superhero franchises are the big things right now,
mm,
um, and they said you could direct and co-write any and produce, of course, any Marvel character, any DC character. Is there anything from your childhood that appealed to you enough that you would say, "Yeah, I want to take this character and I want to make a movie"?
no, I think it starts and stops with Pee Wee Herman. You know,
Okay, uh, uh, I'm gonna have to ask for a little clarification on that.
no, I didn't. No, I don't. I get tickled by the superheroes, but I didn't grow up with them, and I don't have them, logged in my heart.
Well, I think you could probably do a decent job for Steve Canyon or Terry and the Pirates.
Maybe I would.
Um, Now, of course, I'm just making sure to get down to the end of the chat. It's been very interactive tonight, and I thank the chat for coming out and presenting your questions and being here with me. Um, as I always like to ask, um, are there because there are people out there who are aspiring movie makers, screenwriters, even trying to figure out a way to make their name as directors, um, taking into account things like Friday the 13th and a complete 180 doing a movie like Nurse with a Purple Hair. How how or what can you say to them that would make them inspired to be able to put a little more fuel in their tank, so to speak?
Well, oh gosh. Well, my kids look at me and what I've done, and they say, "Huh, how how hard could it be?" you know. Um, and I think that to the extent that I would be bold enough to give advice, I would suggest that um, it's very competitive and very difficult. You got to know that going in. You have probably all seen some version of movies and media your whole life, and because you've spent so much time with it, you think you know it. But it's like spending a lot of time in a car. Um, you don't know it until you take it apart and put it back together again lots of times. And I think that what you have to do and plan to do is find ways to make your own movies and tell your own stories and make them and tell them for yourself and for those around you that you think will relate to them. And don't try to make the big commercial success. It make as many little movies as you can, and in doing that, you'll start to learn the craft. The craft is enormously complicated, and it takes a great deal of time. You know, the 10,000 hour rule, which is sort of like it's the baseline. It's your ante in the game, which is to say, plan to spend 40 hours a week for 5 years doing this thing and studying it, and don't expect that you're going to be able to go to a weekend seminar and all of a sudden become a star. You just have to put in the hours, and there's no way not to. Having said that, go for it. It's, the cameras are there, the editing software is there, everything is there, so much less expensive than it ever was, and it means that anybody who really has their eye on doing it can do it. And so my suggestion is, go for
And I would reiterate with the PEC acronym:
it.
have your
Yeah.
passion, make the effort, and be committed to what you want to do.
Mm.
There's there's nothing sadder than someone who waits for success to fall into their lap. You sincerely really do have you have to work at it, and I think Sean Cunningham proves that fact, that if you've got the passion, if you make the effort, and you have the commitment, you can make a global impact, um, uh, regardless of what the genre is. And once again, just to shill, because it's personal to me. Take the at least take the 2 minutes of time and check out the trailer that I have down in the descriptor for The Nurse with the Purple Hair. Click on that trailer. Make your judgment. I do not think anyone is going to be regretful of spending the couple of bucks to watch this movie. And and just to get my big shill out of the way, because people do want to know. Um, Let me go ahead and pull this up. What's coming up in November? Uh, we have uh, B movie director Jim Wynorski. He's going to be there in the first week. After that, we're going to have legendary adult film actress Ginger Lynn Allen in the second week. On the third week, we're going to have the YouTube sensation Random Encounters. If you guys haven't seen Random Encounters, they are awesome. They do 5-minute musicals that are based on video games. They're hilarious. And then, of course, to round out the month, we're going to have the owner, creator, and facilitator of the Best Horror Podcast. This is as ranked by fans and Podcast One as the best horror podcast around. We're going to have David Cummings on, talking about the state of horror and, of course, the state of creepypastas as well. So please feel free to join us for that. Please also make sure and take a little bit of time. Check out the links that are in the descriptors. Not only Sean's links, but of course the prescription for additional entertainment. I think you will not be dissatisfied. And of course, if you like what I do, I've got Streamlabs down there. If you want to throw a couple donos, that's fine. But I'd really appreciate just showing back up and being the great audience that you are, asking the intelligent questions, and getting the great answers. So once again, Sean, thank you very much for being part of the show. This was brilliant. This is definitely going to be watched and listened to 20 years down the road when we're both dust. And I think and I think people are going to find a lot of inspiration to it. So for the audience and myself, I certainly do appreciate you taking the time and making this another great interview.
Well, thank you very much for listening, and I really appreciate your interest. And good luck to you, your sister, and your mom.
Well, thank you very much. We're just going to make her comfortable at this point. Um, and once again, thanks everybody for coming out. If there was a diagnosis to be given, once again, we're stumped. There is definitely nothing wrong with the patient, and being a healthful and productive patient, we can only say we're looking forward to more greater things to come. So for Doctor on Call, the cure for the common interview, I'm DocGriffon, and thank you very much for coming out. The doctor's office is closed.